I was physically walking through the library the other day.
Actually walking. That is a novelty.
Yeah, it really is. And I found myself in that back corner where the dust motes are just sort of suspended in the air.
I know exactly the spot.
Yeah.
Smells like vanilla and old paper.
Exactly. And I saw this title that it totally stopped me in my tracks.
What was the topic?
The Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, wow. The classic.
Right. And my immediate reaction was just, wait, didn't we figure this out already? I mean, I think a lot of us just assume that it belongs on a shelf next to, I don't know, Bigfoot.
Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah, exactly. Like something that was a huge deal in the 70s, but we just kind of debunked it and moved on.
But then you looked at the materials.
I did. I opened up the file you sent over for this deep dive.
Yeah.
And I started reading the actual police reports, the Navy inquiries, the black box transcripts, and I realized I was just completely wrong.
We haven't solved it at all.
No, we really haven't. In fact, the more you look at the raw data, the weirder it gets.
And that is exactly the sensation we want to capture for you today. Because we aren't just retelling old ghost stories here.
Right.
We are opening a sealed archive. We really want to take a modern, highly analytical look at a legend that has persisted for centuries. And based on our sources today, we are going to be discussing the specific contents and mechanics of the Bermuda Triangle.
And we're going to take our time with this. The source data is dense, so our speed today won't be too fast. We really want to walk you through this methodically.
Methodically is the only way to do it, because the triangle has been sensationalized to the point of absolute parody. But right underneath all that sensationalism, there is a very hard, very cold reality.
A reality that involves a giant patch of ocean that just seems to, well, delete people.
Delete is a very good word for it.
I don't use it lightly either, because usually when things go wrong at sea, there is a process.
Right, a sequence of events.
Yeah. You have a distress call, you find debris, maybe there's an oil slick. But here, it's just evaporation.
Evaporation, yes. And before we get into the how, whether it's methane gas or rogue waves or spatial disorientation, we really need to establish the where and the how big.
Because I think the popular imagination just pictures this spooky little storm cloud hovering somewhere near Florida.
Which is completely inaccurate. The geography in the source material is actually very specific. We call it a triangle, and it is almost a perfect equilateral triangle.
So what are the actual boundaries?
The three vertices are critical to understanding the traffic flow. You have the island of Bermuda as the northern point.
Okay.
Then you have Miami down in southern Florida. And the third point is Puerto Rico.
And just to help you visualize the sheer scale of this, because the word triangle makes it sound manageable, like a small bay or something.
Oh, no, it is massive. We are talking about roughly 1.3 million square kilometers.
Which is about 500,000 square miles of open ocean.
To give you a visual analogy from the source material, I want you to imagine a triangle connecting Beijing, Taipei, and Osaka.
Wow.
That is the size of the area we are discussing.
That really puts it in perspective. That is a massive chunk of the planet, and it's not just empty water out there. It's not like the middle of the Pacific where nobody ever goes.
Quite the opposite. It is one of the busiest shipping lanes in the entire world.
Right, because you have cruise ships coming out of Florida every day.
Cruise ships, commercial freighters heading to Europe, private yachts, island hopping, and commercial flights crisscrossing overhead every single hour of the day.
Which naturally brings up the skeptic's argument right out of the gate. Is this whole thing just a numbers game?
The statistical probability argument.
Yeah. I mean, if you have 1 million people passing through a busy intersection, you are obviously going to have more fender benders there than on a quiet country road.
And to an extent, that is entirely true. There are many accidents there simply because there are many people there. But, and but that really drives our deep dive today, there is a specific subset of these accidents that completely defy the statistical norm.
It's not that ships are sinking.
No, it is how they are disappearing. No mayday, no wreckage, just total inexplicable silence.
And what surprised me the most in the research is that this isn't past tense.
Not at all.
I think I subconsciously decided the Bermuda Triangle stopped eating planes right around the time GPS became a thing. But the source material lists cases that are terrifyingly recent.
It is a very common misconception that this is a pre-technology mystery. But I can assure you, the ocean does not care about your GPS.
So true.
Let's look at the case of the U.S. cargo ship from October 2015. This is the modern era. We have satellites, advanced weather tracking, redundant communication systems.
And yet this massive ship just vanishes. Now, in this specific case, they did eventually find the vessel.
They did, but the discovery was almost more disturbing than the disappearance itself,
Why is that?
because it falls into the classic ghost ship category. The ship was located intact, but the crew, every single person on board, was simply gone.
That just chills me to the bone. It's like the Mary Celeste story from the 1800s, but it's happening in a world where everyone literally has a smartphone in their pocket.
Exactly.
How do you even explain an empty ship floating out there in 2015?
The official reports usually just cite reason unknown, or they might speculate about life rafts being deployed in a panic. But without any survivors to interview, we're just left with a floating tomb.
And that ambiguity is what really fuels the legend.
Is.
But there's another modern case that I think is even more baffling because it involves aviation. And aviation is so heavily regulated now, every single thing is tracked.
You were talking about the Skylight Group incident.
Yes. From May 15th, 2017.
This case is a perfect example of the suddenness we just talked about. We were looking at a private charter flight. The aircraft was an MU-2B.
Now, for those of us who aren't pilots, what kind of plane is that? Are we talking about a little two-seater hobby plane?
No, this is a significant step up from that. The MU-2B is a twin-engine turboprop. It's a high-performance aircraft. It's pressurized, capable of flying high and fast. It's a very serious machine for serious travel.
Then the passengers were pretty high profile, too.
Yes. On board was the CEO of Skylight Group, a very prominent businesswoman. And she was traveling with her 2 young sons, who were just 3 and 4 years old,
God, that's awful.
and a professional pilot. They were flying a completely standard route from Puerto Rico to Florida.
So they were flying straight through the triangle.
Straight through,
What were the conditions like that day?
pristine. And this is crucial to understand. They were cruising at roughly 7,000 meters.
Which is about 24,000 feet.
Right. At that altitude, you are flying way above most of the messy weather. The reports state the visibility was good, no storms, no turbulence at all, just smooth sailing.
So you're at 24,000 feet, you have a professional pilot, reliable engines, and perfectly clear skies. And then what?
And then they simply cease to exist on the radar.
Now, I want to unpack this a bit, because I really think Hollywood has ruined our understanding of how plane crashes actually work.
In what way?
Well, in the movies, there's always this massive struggle. The pilot screams Mayday into the radio, the engines start smoking, the alarms are blaring, people are frantically typing on computers.
Right, the dramatic buildup.
Yeah. But in reality, if something goes wrong at 24,000 feet, you have time, don't you?
You have a significant amount of time.
Mm.
If an engine fails at that height, the plane just becomes a glider.
It doesn't drop like a stone.
No. From 24,000 feet, you could glide for maybe 15 or even 20 minutes. You have plenty of time to radio air traffic control. You have time to run through troubleshooting checklists.
Even if both engines failed at the exact same time.
Even then, yes, you would still be talking to the ground all the way down.
But in this case,
Absolute silence. The radar blip just vanished.
wow.
Now, unlike the evaporation cases of the past, search teams did eventually find debris fields in the water for this one. And crucially, they recovered the black box.
The flight data recorder.
Yeah.
The one witness that never lies. When I read this part of the source material, I totally expected a smoking gun. You know, I expected to hear a recording of an explosion or the pilot shouting about a UFO or just something.
That is the expectation. The black box records everything. Cockpit conversation, engine pressure, flap positions, electrical output. If a single light bulb flickers in the cockpit, the black box usually knows about it.
So investigators plugged it in, ready to finally solve the mystery.
And they found a perfectly normal flight.
Wait, what do you mean normal? They crashed.
The data showed the engines were running at completely normal parameters.
Mm-hmm.
The electrical systems were all green. The pilot was calm.
No weather anomalies.
Nothing recorded. The data stream simply stops.
It stops, like someone just pulled the plug out of the wall.
Essentially, yes. One fraction of a second, the plane is flying perfectly at 24,000 feet. The very next millisecond, the data ends.
That implies that whatever happened out there was so catastrophic and so instantaneous that neither the human pilot nor the automated computer sensors had a single millisecond to register it.
Correct. It suggests an event of overwhelming speed. The plane didn't spiral down, it didn't struggle against a stall. It either fell out of the sky like a stone or it was destroyed in a microsecond.
And that's almost worse than finding a cause.
It is.
Because if you find a loose bolt, you can just mandate that everyone fixes that bolt. If
Yeah.
you find a pilot error, you can improve the training protocols. But when the official answer is just, we don't know, how do you even process that?
You generally don't. The source notes that the CEO's husband actually continued the search privately long after the Coast Guard gave up and went home.
Because he just couldn't accept it.
He couldn't reconcile the facts.
Yeah.
He truly believed they might still be alive on an island somewhere, simply because the alternative that his family was deleted from existence in a split second was just too impossible to accept.
It really highlights the cruelty of this mystery. It doesn't offer any closure, it just offers absence.
Yes.
But to really understand this phenomenon, we have to look back at the origin story. Because before 1945, the Bermuda Triangle was just a patch of water where ships occasionally sank.
But after 1945, it became a legend.
Right. And you are referring, of course, to Flight 19.
Flight 19. This is the case that really started it all. If you open any book on the paranormal, Chapter 1 is always Flight 19.
Let's set the scene for this one, because the historical context really matters here. It's December 5, 1945. World War II has just ended. The entire world is finally taking a breath.
And we are at the Naval Air Station in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
It's a sunny afternoon. The mood is probably pretty optimistic. These are young men, but they are highly trained. They are flying TBM Avenger torpedo bombers.
Which is an important detail.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of these planes. They aren't flimsy little things. They look like flying tanks.
They effectively were flying tanks. The Avenger was the absolute workhorse of the Pacific Theater. It's a heavy, rugged, single-engine aircraft with a crew of 3. It is built to take incredible punishment.
It carries fuel, it carries heavy weapons.
And it carries survival gear, including a deployable life raft. It is very, very hard to completely lose an Avenger.
And they had 5 of them out there.
Yes. Flight 19 was a full squadron of 5 planes, carrying 14 airmen in total. The mission was supposed to be a milk run.
Which is military slang for an easy, totally routine trip.
Exactly. They were just supposed to fly east about 200 kilometers to the Hens and Chickens Shoals, drop some practice bombs, turn north for a bit, and then fly southwest back home to Florida. A simple triangle loop. 2 hours, tops.
So at 2:10 p.m., it's wheels up. Everything starts perfectly fine. They drop their practice bombs. The weather is reported as clear.
But then, around 3:45 p.m., the trouble starts.
It starts on the radio.
Yes. The control tower in Fort Lauderdale picks up a transmission. But strangely, it wasn't a direct call to the tower. The tower was just overhearing chatter between the pilots themselves.
That's eerie. It's like listening in on a phone call you weren't supposed to hear. What exactly were they saying?
The tone was all wrong. It was anxious. One pilot was heard saying, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn."
And the flight leader for this run was Lieutenant Charles Taylor. He was the veteran instructor, the guy who was absolutely supposed to know the way home.
Right. And he comes on the line and reports a critical failure. He says to the tower, "Both my compasses are out."
Both of them.
That is his claim. Now, in 1945, aircraft compasses were mechanical, magnetic, and gyroscopic. For both of them to fail simultaneously in a way that the pilot actually notices is incredibly rare.
It suggests either a major magnetic anomaly or just extreme confusion on his part.
Exactly.
So ground control tries to help him out. They look at the map and they say, "Okay, Lieutenant, you're supposed to be east of Florida. Just fly west."
With the sun on your face.
Right, put the afternoon sun in your face. If you fly west, you have to hit Florida. You literally cannot miss the continent of North America.
It is the most basic navigation rule in the Atlantic. Go west, hit land. But Taylor doesn't do it.
Why not?
This is where we get into the psychology of a lost pilot. Taylor wasn't just unsure of his location, he was convinced of a complete falsehood.
What did he think?
He looked down at the islands below him, which were almost certainly the Bahamas, and his brain misidentified them. He genuinely thought he was flying over the Florida Keys,
Wait, the Keys are way south of where he was supposed to be.
hundreds of miles south.
But if you truly believe you are over the Keys, then flying west is suicide.
Because west of the Keys is just the Gulf of Mexico. It's thousands of miles of open water.
So, thinking he needs to get back to the mainland from the Keys, he decides to fly northeast.
But he wasn't in the Keys. He was east of Florida. So by turning northeast,
He was flying directly away from land.
he was heading straight into the vast, empty expanse of the deep Atlantic Ocean.
And the other pilots, the students in the other planes, did they know he was going the wrong way?
The radio transcripts heavily suggest they did. You can actually hear them arguing with him on the radio.
Oh, man.
One of the junior pilots is recorded saying, "Damn it, if we would just fly west, we would get home." They knew the sun was setting in the west. They knew exactly where home was.
That is just heartbreaking to think about. You're sitting in your plane, you know the way home, but rigid military discipline dictates that you follow the flight leader.
Even if the flight leader is flying you straight to your death.
Yeah.
It is the ultimate tragedy of the chain of command. Taylor was the superior officer. They followed his orders. And as they flew further northeast, the weather started to turn.
Because winter evenings in the Atlantic can get rough very quickly.
The seas picked up, the sun went down, it got dark and turbulent.
And they just flew until the fuel ran out.
That is the only logical conclusion. 5 heavy bombers, eventually running on fumes. One by one, their engines would have sputtered out and died. They would have had to try to ditch in high seas and pitch black darkness.
We established an Avenger sinks pretty fast.
Like a brick, especially in rough, churning water.
But the story doesn't even end there. And this is the part of the timeline that gives me goosebumps every single time I read it. The Navy realizes the boys are lost.
It's about 7:30 p.m. now. Pitch black outside. They launch an immediate rescue mission.
They send up a PBM Mariner.
Yes. This is a flying boat.
Yeah.
A massive seaplane specifically designed for long-range search and rescue. It has a crew of 13 men. It's big. It has early radar. It's built exactly for this kind of mission.
It takes off to find Flight 19, and 30 minutes later,
It vanishes.
oh my God.
Run from the radar. But in this specific case, we actually have a witness.
Really?
Yes, a commercial tanker ship, the SS Gaines Mills, was transiting the area. The captain of the ship reported seeing a massive fireball in the night sky.
A fireball! So the rescue plane exploded.
He described a huge ball of flame dropping from the sky into the ocean, and then the fuel burning on the surface of the water for 10 straight minutes.
Was it shot down? I mean, did it accidentally hit one of the Avengers in the dark?
Highly unlikely.
Yeah.
You see, the PBM Mariner had a very unfortunate nickname among its flight crews.
What was it?
They called it the Flying Gas Tank.
That does not inspire a lot of confidence.
It shouldn't. The aircraft carried a truly massive amount of aviation fuel for those long-range ocean patrols. And the vapor lines inside the fuselage were absolutely notorious for leaking.
Oh, no.
If you had a fuel leak slowly filling the sealed cabin with invisible vapor, all it would take is a single tiny spark.
Like a flip switch on the radio panel.
A flip switch, a static discharge from a jacket, maybe someone lighting a cigarette to calm their nerves.
In doom.
A catastrophic mid-air disintegration. No debris was ever recovered because the explosion likely shredded the plane into tiny pieces, and the ensuing fire consumed whatever was left floating.
So if we look at the toll, in the span of about 5 hours, the U.S. Navy loses 5 torpedo bombers, 1 massive rescue plane, and 27 men.
And despite launching a massive 5-day search involving hundreds of ships and aircraft scanning the area, not a single life jacket, not a single oil switch, not a single fragment of twisted metal was ever found.
That totally clean sweep is really what birthed the legend.
Yeah.
And the official Navy report didn't exactly help calm things down, did it?
No, it did not. The Navy initially wrote pilot error as the official cause, squarely blaming Lieutenant Taylor.
But his family fought back.
Taylor's mother was furious. She argued, and quite legally soundly, that since they found no bodies and no planes, the Navy had zero proof of any error. She demanded they clear his name.
So they changed the verdict.
They caved to the pressure and changed the official cause to reasons unknown.
And there's that famous quote from the amended report. It's so unusually poetic for a dry military document. They wrote, "They vanished as if they had flown to Mars."
That one line effectively authorized all the supernatural theories for the next 50 years. When the United States Navy officially says it's like they went to Mars, the general public starts thinking, well, maybe they actually did.
Flight 19 is definitely the cornerstone of the whole mythos, but if we dig further into the history, we see that ships had been disappearing in that exact area for a very long time.
Yes. The source actually mentions a statistical spike in disappearances, specifically during the winter months.
Right. Mostly concentrated between December and March.
Which perfectly aligns with the weather patterns. Winter storms in the Atlantic are notoriously ferocious, but it also aligns with the broader ghost ship phenomenon.
Let's talk about the Carroll A. Deering.
This was in 1921.
Yeah. The Deering was this beautiful, massive, 5-masted schooner, a huge sailing ship carrying a load of coal.
And it was found run aground at Cape Hatteras, which is technically on the northern edge of the triangle, but is very much part of the same dangerous maritime corridor.
And what was the condition of the ship when they found it?
It was essentially perfect. The sails were still set, the hull was structurally sound, But when the Coast Guard rescuers finally boarded her, total silence,
The entire crew was gone.
gone without a trace.
And the one detail about this case that always gets me is the food.
Yes, the boarding reports explicitly state that food was set out in the galley. It looked exactly like they were right in the middle of preparing for a meal.
Why on earth would you leave a ship in the middle of cooking dinner? If the ship is sinking or on fire, obviously you panic and run. But if the food is just sitting there calmly on the table, it implies they were suddenly interrupted.
Interrupted or taken.
Yeah.
And that is where the imagination just runs wild. The lifeboats were indeed missing, so they likely abandoned ship voluntarily.
But why abandon a perfectly good ship that isn't sinking? Why leave your dinner?
The why is the most haunting part of the Deering mystery. But for sheer terrifying scale, nothing really beats the USS Cyclops.
The Cyclops. I mean, the name alone suggests an absolute monster of a ship.
And it was a monster. It was a 19,000-ton naval collier.
Wow.
It was 540 feet long, built specifically to carry massive amounts of coal and fuel for the fleet.
19,000 tons. That is essentially a floating steel skyscraper.
It was returning from Barbados to Baltimore in February of 1918, and it was fully loaded with manganese ore.
Now, manganese ore is incredibly heavy stuff.
Extremely dense. The ship was sitting very low in the water, and it had 309 crew members on board.
309 men. That's an entire village floating out there.
And it had a very strong radio system. If they hit a rogue storm, if they hit a German mine, because this was World War I, after all, they had a catastrophic engine fire, they had ample time and equipment to send a signal.
But they didn't.
Not a single whiff bird, no SOS. The ship just wasn't there anymore.
And the expert commentary in our source material makes a really great point about the basic physics of sinking a ship that big.
It is a vital point. A 19,000-ton ship does not just slip under the water and sink like a stone. It takes time to flood compartments.
It rolls, it groans, it breaks apart.
Exactly. Air pockets get trapped under immense pressure and blow out bulkheads. Debris floats to the surface. Life jackets float. Bodies float. To lose a ship of that incredible magnitude without a single piece of wreckage or a single distress call suggests an event so cataclysmic it is almost unimaginable.
So we have the what? We have planes falling from completely clear skies. We have heavy rescue planes exploding in midair. We have dinners left half-eaten on tables. And we have steel giants just vanishing into the abyss.
It's very easy to see why people immediately jump to aliens or time warps.
It really is. But our source material actually provides scientific theories that are, honestly, just as terrifying as the supernatural ones.
I would argue they are much more terrifying because they are real, documented phenomena. We need to look closely at the environment itself. This patch of ocean is not a calm swimming pool. It is a highly active geological and meteorological trap.
Let's start with the air above the water. There's a theory in the source about something called hexagonal clouds.
This is a fascinating meteorological development from around 2016. Scientists looking at advanced satellite imagery over the Bahamas noticed cloud formations that were distinctly hexagonal.
Six-sided clouds, which is weird, right? I mean, clouds are usually just amorphous blobs.
Nature does not usually draw straight lines in the sky, but these formations act as what meteorologists call air bombs.
Air bombs. That sounds like a military weapon.
It acts exactly like one. These specific clouds are associated with incredibly powerful microbursts. A microburst is essentially a dense column of cold air that crashes straight down from the upper atmosphere. It hits the surface of the ocean and blasts outward in all directions.
How fast are we talking?
We are talking about wind velocities reaching up to 270 kilometers per hour.
That's like 170 miles per hour. That's the force of a Category 5 hurricane.
Yes. But a hurricane gives you days of warning. You can see it coming on the radar and steer around it. An air bomb is a hyper-localized sudden event. It's a hammer falling out of a clear sky.
So if a plane, even a sturdy one like the Avengers from Flight 19, flies directly into one of those,
It simply gets swatted down. The sheer vertical wind shear alone could tear the wings right off the fuselage. Or the downdraft could simply slam the aircraft into the ocean surface long before the pilot even has time to reach for the radio button.
And what about ships? How does an air bomb affect a massive boat?
The extreme downward pressure on the water creates what we call rogue waves. These are concentrated waves that can reach 10, 15, maybe even 20 meters in height. And they appear almost instantly.
Wow.
If a ship like the Cyclops, sitting low and heavy with manganese ore, gets hit broadside by a 20-meter wave out of nowhere, it capsizes immediately. It rolls over and sinks in a matter of minutes.
Which perfectly explains the lack of an SOS call. You're dead before you even fully realize you're dying.
Precisely. It is instant, violent destruction.
Okay, so the sky is actively trying to kill you. But what about the water itself? There's a theory here that the source calls the ocean fart,
I know.
which I have to say is a very undignified name for a terrifying way to die.
It is a bit crude. The proper scientific term is a methane hydrate eruption, and the physics behind it are incredibly sound and well documented.
So break it down for us. What is actually happening down there on the seafloor?
The seabed under the Bermuda Triangle has some very deep trenches and massive amounts of decomposing organic matter. Over thousands of years, this decomposition creates methane gas.
Okay.
But because the water down there is so incredibly deep and so freezing cold, the immense pressure actually freezes the methane. It gets trapped in an unstable lattice of ice called methane hydrate.
So the ocean floor is basically just a giant minefield of frozen explosive gas.
Yes, it is. And it is highly unstable. If the water warms up even slightly, maybe the Gulf Stream shifts its path, or if there's an underwater landslide or a minor seismic tremor, that frozen methane can suddenly destabilize.
And it sublimates.
Exactly. Sublimation means it turns directly from a solid ice state into a gas state instantly.
And gas expands rapidly.
Extremely rapidly. So you have this massive explosive release of methane bubbles rushing toward the surface. We're talking about a dense column of bubbles that could be miles wide.
And this is where the physics of buoyancy comes in. I love this part of the source because it's so counterintuitive to how we think water works.
It really is. A ship floats because it is less dense than the water it displaces. It relies on the density of the liquid to hold it up.
Right.
But if the water suddenly becomes saturated with millions of gas bubbles, it isn't really water anymore. It's a froth. It's foam.
So the density of the water just plummets.
Drastically. The ship instantly loses its physical support.
So if a ship sails directly into a rising methane plume, it doesn't sink slowly like the Titanic.
It drops. It physically falls through the foam until it hits solid, dense water again, or until it hits the bottom of the ocean.
That is literal nightmare fuel. It's like a trap door just opening up right under the boat.
And because the gas is still violently rising and churning, the extreme turbulence would likely capsize the vessel on the way down. There is absolutely no time to launch lifeboats, no time to use the radio.
And the source material says this could actually affect planes flying overhead, too. How does a bubble in the ocean pull down an airplane at 20,000 feet?
If the underwater eruption is massive enough, the methane gas violently breaks the surface of the water and continues to rise up into the atmosphere as a dense, invisible cloud.
Okay.
Now, you have to remember, methane gas is highly, highly flammable.
Oh, I see where this is going.
If a plane flies through a concentrated cloud of invisible, odorless methane gas, the extreme heat from the jet turbines or the exhaust from a piston engine could easily ignite it.
The airplane engine basically becomes a match.
Exactly. The plane is suddenly flying inside a massive fuel air bomb. It would cause a catastrophic mid-air explosion.
Which links directly back to the rescue plane in the Flight 19 incident.
Yes. The fireball the tanker captain saw dropping into the ocean, that could very well have been a massive methane ignition.
Is there actual geological proof that this happens, or is this just a neat theory drawn on a whiteboard somewhere?
We haven't caught it happening live on camera in the Triangle yet, but we absolutely have physical evidence elsewhere. The source points to the coast of Norway.
What's in Norway?
Ocean researchers mapping the seafloor there have found giant craters. We are talking about craters 800 meters wide and 45 meters deep.
Wow.
These are known as blowout craters. They are the physical smoking guns of massive methane explosions in the past. So we know for a fact the Earth is capable of doing this.
So we have air bombs crushing ships and ocean farts swallowing them whole. What about the compasses, though? In almost every single ghost story, Flight 19 included, the pilot specifically complains about their compasses spinning wildly.
Right. This brings us to the theory of magnetic anomalies. The source notes that deep under the seabed there could be massive geological deposits of magnetite or iron ore.
Left over from what?
Ancient volcanic activity. They estimate there could be up to 500 billion tons of it down there.
That is a staggering amount of metal.
It is. And a natural magnet of that immense size could theoretically interfere with a mechanical compass.
Okay.
However, I do have to be the voice of scientific reason here.
Okay, hit me.
The expert analysis in our source is actually pretty skeptical about this being the primary cause of disappearances today.
Why is that? If the metal is there, shouldn't it mess things up?
Because magnetic variation is a very well-known and documented phenomenon. Pilots have updated charts for it, they know how to compensate, and more importantly, modern planes use GPS.
Which relies on satellites in space, not magnetic fields on Earth.
Exactly. Yet the disappearances continue even in the GPS era.
So the magnetic rocks might have confused Christopher Columbus back in the day, but they really shouldn't confuse a modern instrument-rated pilot.
Exactly. Which naturally brings us to the final, and in my professional opinion, the most disturbing theory in the entire file.
More disturbing than invisible gas bombs.
Yes, because this one doesn't rely on incredibly rare clouds or freak gas explosions. It relies on the one single component that is present on every single flight.
The human pilot.
The human brain. We need to talk deeply about spatial disorientation.
What the source refers to as the gray curtain.
Yes. The source highlights this as the absolute most probable cause for many of these aviation mysteries. And it's terrifying because it routinely happens to highly experienced pilots. In fact, deep experience can sometimes become a trap.
How does experience make you more vulnerable?
Well, imagine you are flying out over the open ocean. It's a slightly hazy day. The sky above you is a flat blue-gray. The water below you is the exact same flat blue-gray.
So there is no visible horizon line at all. The world just turns into a giant bowl of gray.
Right. Your eyes have nothing to lock onto. So without a visual reference, you subconsciously start relying on your inner ear, the vestibular system.
The fluid-filled tubes inside your head that give you balance.
Exactly. They tell you if you are moving or tilting. But human biology is deeply flawed for flight. The vestibular system is designed to detect acceleration, not constant motion.
What does that actually mean when you're sitting in a cockpit?
It means if you accidentally enter a very slow, gradual bank to the left, the fluid in your ear eventually settles down. Your brain literally stops telling you that you are turning.
So you feel, physically, with 100% certainty that you are flying straight and level.
But you aren't. And the instruments in the cockpit are screaming the truth at you. The artificial horizon gauge clearly shows you are banked sharply. The altimeter shows you rapidly dropping altitude.
So you look down at the gauge and it says you're turning and falling, but your gut, your entire body says, no, I am flying perfectly straight.
And this is the exact moment of death for so many pilots. It becomes a battle of man versus machine. When panic sets in, the human instinct is entirely primal.
You trust your own body.
You trust your body and you ignore the broken gauge. You decide the machine is lying to you. So to stop the fall, you pull straight back on the control stick to climb.
But if you are actually banked sharply to the left...
Pulling back on the stick doesn't make you climb.
Yeah.
It violently tightens the turn. It spirals you downward even faster. This is known in aviation as the graveyard spiral. The harder you pull back in a panic, the faster you spin toward the ocean. And all the while, your terrified brain is fully convincing you that you are pulling up into a safe climb.
That is purely horrifying. It's basically a forced biological hallucination.
It is. And it connects perfectly back to Flight 19. Remember what Lieutenant Taylor said on the radio?
He said both his compasses were broken.
Right. He didn't trust his instruments.
Because they were likely never broken at all. He was broken.
He was completely disoriented. The islands below him didn't look right because he was horribly lost. His brain entirely rejected the perfectly good instrument data because it deeply conflicted with his flawed internal map.
So he just flew northeast because his gut convinced him it was the way home.
He flew his entire squadron into the dark void because he simply couldn't fight his own biology.
The source also mentioned something related to this called an isolation effect.
Yes, and this deeply applies to sailors on ships too. Staring out at a completely featureless horizon for days on end can trigger a profound psychological detachment from reality.
Like the call of the void.
Exactly. The human brain gets intensely bored, it gets anxious, and it literally starts to glitch. It creates false inputs.
So the Bermuda Triangle might not actually be a place where the fundamental laws of physics break down. It might just be a place where the human mind breaks down.
It creates the absolute perfect trap. You get disoriented, you fly deeper into the featureless ocean, you eventually run out of fuel, you crash into the water, and then, and this is the vital cleanup step, the Gulf Stream takes over.
The Gulf Stream, that is basically a massive river flowing right through the ocean.
A massive, incredibly high-speed underwater river. It flows northward directly through the triangle at about 4 to 5 knots.
That's really fast for water.
Extremely fast.
Yeah.
If a plane crashes, the debris doesn't just sink peacefully to the bottom and sit there. It is violently swept away.
So by the time the Coast Guard rescue team arrives 12 hours later...
The actual wreckage is already 60 miles away from the last known radar blip.
So the ocean just efficiently cleans up its own crime scene.
Exactly. It erases the evidence.
We have really covered a lot of ground here today. We have Killer hexagonal clouds, explosive methane gas from the seafloor, magnetic interference, and terrifying brain glitches.
It is a lot to process.
It makes an incredibly compelling case for natural causes. But, and this is the thing that still gets me, people still willingly go there every single day. It's not a restricted military zone.
Far from it. This brings us to what the source calls the tourism paradox.
Right. If you just look at a map of modern cruise ship routes, the Bermuda Triangle is essentially a marine superhighway.
If it was truly an unavoidable supernatural death trap, Carnival Cruises would have gone bankrupt decades ago.
Or at the very least, their insurance premiums would be completely unaffordable.
Exactly. The everyday reality is that thousands of ships and commercial planes pass through there safely every single day.
And the local economies of Bermuda, the Bahamas, and Florida rely heavily on that constant tourism flow.
They absolutely depend on it. They certainly don't print "come visit the Triangle and vanish" on their glossy travel brochures.
Right, they keep the ghost stories for the gift shop mugs, not the pre-flight safety briefings.
Exactly. But there is one specific group mentioned in our sources that actively, purposefully seeks out the danger in that zone.
The treasure hunters.
Yes, because the ocean floor out there is an untouched museum of maritime history. You have centuries of shipwrecks.
Spanish galleons loaded with gold, lost merchant ships, old warships.
They all lie on the bottom, so treasure hunters naturally flock there. And interestingly enough, the source notes that these modern tech-equipped hunters often report experiencing the exact same compass failures that Lieutenant Taylor did in 1945.
Really? Even today?
Yes. Now, maybe it's those massive iron ore deposits we discussed interacting with their specialized gear, or maybe it's just the extreme psychological difficulty of navigating deep, featureless water for weeks on end.
But either way, it just ensures the legend constantly feeds itself.
It does. It keeps the mystery alive in the modern era.
So, after going through all these files, where does this actually leave us? I mean, we have the skeptics who just look at the traffic and say it's purely statistics, and we have the believers who sway it's a supernatural vortex.
I think the most honest truth is somewhere right in the middle.
How so?
The statistics might be perfectly normal per capita, but the specific nature of the accidents is entirely unique to that region. The scientific mechanics we deeply discussed today, the methane sublimation, the violent microbursts, those are incredibly rare high-energy events.
They just don't happen in every other ocean.
Right. They require a very specific environment.
So the triangle isn't haunted by ghosts. It's just geographically and geologically volatile.
It is a literal perfect storm of geography and geology. And until someone actually finds the rusted wreckage of Flight 19, or until we can conclusively explain exactly where the 309 crew members of the Cyclops went, there will always be a gap in our understanding.
A permanently sealed gap in the archive.
Yes. And the source material actually ends with a final thought that I find to be quite provocative.
What's that?
It suggests that while we have all these perfectly sound scientific theories, we still cannot definitively rule out the idea that some of these lost travelers simply slipped into another time and space.
Wow. The ultimate sealed archive.
It's a very romantic notion, honestly,
Yeah.
but it really speaks to our deepest human fears. We desperately want to believe there is a magical place where they went, rather than accepting that they just violently ceased to exist.
Well, whether it's an interdimensional wormhole or just a massive bubble of ocean fart gas, I think I will be keeping my feet firmly planted on dry land for a good long while.
That is probably a very wise choice.
If you are out there listening to this on a plane flying right over the Bahamas right now, maybe just take a second to double check your instruments and trust them.
And definitely avoid flying into any hexagonal clouds.
Yes, definitely avoid the hexagonal clouds. Well, that is it for this deep dive into the Devil's Triangle. Thanks for listening.